Breaking tonight, the Hollywood battle that no one saw coming just took a shocking turn. As powerful lawyers clash, fearless reporters refuse to back down, and Blake Lively finds herself facing a storm that could change everything. The courtroom drama surrounding Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has now spiraled into something far bigger than anyone anticipated, and the sheer scale of what is unfolding has left Hollywood insiders stunned as allegations, counterclaims, and subpoenas crash into the world of journalism, social media, and celebrity power games in a way that feels almost cinematic, yet tragically real. Because at the center of this storm are not just two Hollywood stars, but an entire system of influence and intimidation that is being dragged into the light as reporters, commentators, and even small independent influencers are suddenly pulled into the orbit of a case that has become more about control of narrative than about truth itself. And when one looks at how this battle has grown, the first thing that strikes you is the sheer audacity of the demands being made. Demands for private communications, internal notes, and even confidential exchanges between journalists and their teams, as if simply criticizing or analyzing a celebrity could suddenly open the door to legal invasion. And what makes this so dramatic is not just the legal stakes, but the emotional intensity of those being targeted, because they are not wealthy moguls or studio executives with endless resources, but often small creators, journalists, and commentators who operate on tight budgets, yet find themselves staring down subpoenas from law firms with reputations for being aggressive and relentless. And the effect is chilling not only on those directly pulled into the case, but on the broader atmosphere of free expression in Hollywood and beyond. Because if this precedent is allowed to take root, then what happens to the next reporter who dares to ask uncomfortable questions? What happens to the next commentator who raises doubt about an A-list celebrity's polished narrative? And here lies the suspense of it all. Because those fighting back are making it clear they will not bend, they will not hand over their sources, or betray their journalistic integrity, even if it costs them money, time, and sleepless nights. And the passion with which they speak, their defiance reveals a deep undercurrent of fearlessness that is now threatening to flip the balance of power. In this saga, turning the glare of scrutiny not onto Baldoni, who was the original target of accusations, but onto Blake Lively and her legal team, who now appear to be stretching their reach into territory many consider off-limits, and as voices rise to condemn the overreach, comparing it to royal-level PR battles where thin skin meets relentless image control. The air grows heavy with anticipation because everyone senses that something monumental is about to break. Either the courts will put a hard stop to this kind of overreach, or the case will enter uncharted waters where influence and celebrity might temporarily bend the rules of accountability. And that uncertainty is what makes every development in this case feel like the next explosive twist in a thriller. And the fact that names like Brian Friedman, Candace Owens, Perez Hilton, Andy Signore, and more have already been dragged into this orbit only raises the stakes further, because each of them represents a different corner of the media ecosystem, from established legal powerhouses to outspoken commentators to controversial gossip columnists. And if they are being targeted, then it is only natural that smaller influencers worry about being next, and that fear is not abstract because motions to compel have already been filed against those who refuse to comply, raising the specter of financial ruin for people who were simply sharing opinions online. And the sheer imbalance between Hollywood power and individual voices makes this entire clash feel like a David versus Goliath story unfolding live, with every hearing, every leaked detail, and every fiery rebuttal adding fuel to the narrative. And at the center of it all is a simple but explosive question: will the First Amendment protections that reporters and commentators have relied on for decades hold strong against this legal onslaught? Or will celebrity influence twist the battlefield into something new and dangerous? And while many legal experts believe the law is on the side of those resisting the subpoenas, the relentless push by Lively's team shows no sign of slowing, creating a suspense that grips every observer, because no one knows whether the final chapters of this saga will end with vindication or with an unsettling precedent that chills free expression for years to come. As this legal war escalates, the deeper layer of intrigue begins to emerge, because it is no longer just about one celebrity's claims against her co-star, but about the machinery of Hollywood itself and how far powerful figures are willing to go to protect their image and silence their critics. And when one listens closely to the voices of those caught in the crossfire, it becomes clear that this is about intimidation, not justice, about narrative control, not truth. Because the subpoenas did not simply ask for evidence relevant to the harassment claims, they reached into the heart of free speech, demanding to see emails, conversations, research notes, and even personal drafts that have nothing to do with the core allegations. And this has created an electric tension in Hollywood circles, because if these demands were honored even once, it would set off a domino effect where any future critic, any reporter, and any online creator could be forced to hand over their private communications simply for daring to speak about the powerful. And this is why the pushback has been so fiery, because those resisting understand the stakes are larger than themselves. They know that if they give in now, it would not only undermine their own integrity, but also destroy protections that have been built over decades. And that sense of responsibility mixed with anger has turned this case into something almost symbolic, a battle that represents the struggle between raw celebrity influence and the principle of free expression. And as each legal filing drops, as each public statement is made, the suspense grows heavier because one misstep could tip the balance, and even seasoned legal analysts admit that this case feels unlike anything they have covered before. It has shades of tabloid wars, it has echoes of royal-level media control, but it also has a distinctly modern twist because the targets include not just mainstream reporters, but digital voices, people with platforms that range from millions of followers to fewer than 50. Yet all of them treated as if they pose a threat to a Hollywood image campaign. And the dramatic irony is impossible to ignore because the very act of trying to silence critics has only amplified the criticism, with commentators now more emboldened than ever to speak out and call attention to what they see as bullying and overreach. And when Brian Friedman, the powerhouse attorney known for his sharp tactics, is mentioned as both a defender and a figure already entangled, the story gains another layer because it becomes clear that this is not just a legal matter, but a clash of personalities, strategies, and reputations that could ripple far beyond this one case. And what grips audiences most is the unpredictability. One moment, legal experts insist the subpoenas will be struck down. The next moment, new motions appear that suggest Lively's team is pushing harder than ever. And in that back and forth lies the emotional roller coaster that has fans, observers, and even casual readers glued to every update because each new turn feels like a cliffhanger in a never-ending series. Will the party reporters stand strong? Will the influencers be crushed by legal bills? Will the judge finally draw a line in the sand? Or will Hollywood money and pressure bend the system in a way that leaves everyone shaken? These are the questions whispered in podcasts, debated in legal circles, and shouted on social media. And every time someone thinks the dust might be settling, another shocking revelation or filing sends the story surging forward again with more force than before. And so the drama builds, like a storm gaining speed on the horizon, and those in the eye of it know they cannot blink, because to falter now would mean conceding not just their personal fight, but the broader principle that no celebrity, no matter how famous, can silence dissent by sheer intimidation alone. What makes this saga even more gripping is the way it has begun to mirror larger cultural battles about truth, power, and the role of media in shaping narratives, because the fight is no longer confined to the courtroom filings and legal briefs. It has spilled into public consciousness, where every interview, every leaked detail, and every emotional outburst becomes part of the wider story. And for those following along, the suspense lies in the contradictions at play, because on the one hand, Blake Lively entered this arena as a Hollywood figure projecting control, grace, and influence. Yet her legal team's moves have painted a picture of desperation and overreach that clashes with the image of untouchable stardom, while on the other hand, Justin Baldoni, who was initially cast as the accused, has shifted into the role of a reluctant survivor of endless litigation costs and PR attacks. And this reversal has stunned observers who now question whether the very case designed to damage him has instead created sympathy for his position. And as this dynamic unfolds, the reporters at the center find themselves thrust into unexpected roles, no longer simple commentators. They are now unwilling protagonists in a battle that could redefine the line between criticism and harassment, between fair commentary and suppression, and their fiery statements of defiance, refusing to betray their sources or surrender their private communications, have only heightened the drama, because each declaration feels like a bold stand against forces much larger than themselves, and the public has noticed, because the more pressure applied, the louder the backlash grows, with comparisons to high-profile figures who failed to manage their public battles with the press. Names like Harry and Meghan invoked as cautionary tales about how relentless attempts to control narrative can backfire spectacularly. And it is this risk of backfire that adds to the tension, because those watching wonder at what point will Lively realize that the strategy of intimidation may be eroding her reputation faster than the original allegations ever could. And in that realization lies the seed of potential collapse. A collapse not of legal structure, but of public perception, which in Hollywood can be just as damaging, if not more so. And yet the story refuses to resolve itself quickly. Every new twist adds another layer of uncertainty. Every deposition, another chance for sparks to fly, and the mention that Friedman himself took Lively's deposition in July or August suggests that hidden transcripts and sealed testimony may yet hold bombshells waiting to detonate. And so the narrative builds with a kind of relentless inevitability, as if the entire entertainment world is holding its breath, waiting for the moment when a single revelation tips the scale either towards vindication or towards ruin, and the creators dragged into this saga. Whether they have millions of subscribers or barely a handful of followers are united by one reality. They are being tested not just legally, but emotionally and financially forced to decide whether to fight back with everything they have or yield under pressure. And that collective struggle gives the story a human core beneath the celebrity gloss because it reminds everyone that power imbalances are not abstract. They are felt in sleepless nights, mounting bills, and the gnawing fear of losing one's voice. But alongside that fear is courage. And it is that courage that has electrified this case, transforming it from a private dispute into a public symbol of resistance and suspense. Now courses through every headline, every whispered rumor, and every court filing. Because all sides know the next move could be decisive, yet none can predict what it will be. As the dust continues to swirl around this case, the most shocking reality is that the end is nowhere in sight, because instead of retreating, both sides appear locked in a standoff with no intention of surrender. And what makes the suspense unbearable is the sheer unpredictability of how the next chapter will unfold, because at any moment, a judge could issue a ruling that reshapes the battlefield, or a leaked transcript could reveal something that changes public opinion overnight. And as reporters, influencers, and commentators steel themselves for what lies ahead, the emotional toll is undeniable. Many have spoken of the intimidation of receiving thick envelopes stamped with law firm seals demanding documents and communications, while others describe the surge of adrenaline that comes with choosing defiance over compliance, and audiences watching from afar feel that same surge because they know they are witnessing not just a legal fight, but a cultural moment where the clash between celebrity power and free expression is playing out in real time. And it is that cultural weight that makes this saga feel larger than life. Because in truth, this is no longer just Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. It is a mirror of how narratives are controlled, who gets to speak, and what happens when ordinary voices challenge extraordinary influence. And the comparisons to historical battles for press freedom are not misplaced because at its heart, this fight touches the same nerve, the principle that no individual, no matter how powerful, should be able to silence criticism through sheer intimidation. And when legal experts warn that the case has shades of a class action where only the lawyers truly benefit, they are pointing to a reality that adds yet another layer of irony. Because while fortunes are spent, reputations are risked, and countless hours are drained, the ultimate outcome may hinge less on truth than on endurance, who can withstand the pressure, the longest who can afford to keep going, and who will collapse first under the strain. And that question lingers like a shadow across every update, leaving the public gripped by the possibility that the case could drag on for years or explode suddenly in a shocking resolution. And so commentators prepare their shows, journalists sharpen their analysis, and fans scroll endlessly for the next breaking detail, because everyone senses the climax is coming, even if no one knows when. And as for Lively, her every move is now scrutinized with the sharpest of lenses, because the attempt to tighten control has ironically loosened her grip on the narrative, and every whisper about sealed testimony or aggressive subpoenas only fuels speculation that her team may have underestimated the resilience of those they targeted. And in this lies the most dramatic twist of all, that in trying to silence voices she may have created a chorus louder than anything before. And as the curtain slowly rises on the next act, the suspense remains unbearable. Will the courts finally step in and restore balance? Will the voices of journalists and influencers prove unbreakable? Or will celebrity power bend the rules in ways that echo for generations? Whatever the outcome, one truth is already clear. This case has become a defining moment, not just for those inside the courtroom, but for anyone who values free expression. And in the final analysis, that is why the world keeps watching, because they know that the battle playing out here is bigger than Hollywood. It is about whether truth can still stand when power tries to silence it, and until that answer comes, the tension will only grow each day heavier than the last, each headline sharper, each revelation more dramatic, leaving everyone holding their breath for the final chapter that has yet to be written. In the end, what makes this case so unforgettable is not just the names involved or the allegations at its center, but the extraordinary way it has spiraled outward into a battle about something far greater than Hollywood gossip, because what began as a personal dispute between two actors has now become a stage for questions about freedom of the press, the power of celebrity influence, and the resilience of individuals who refuse to be silenced. And that transformation is what has captured the imagination of so many watching from afar, because they see in this story not just drama, but a reflection of their own world where voices can be threatened and narratives can be manipulated. And in that reflection lies the real suspense of this saga, because it reminds us that truth is fragile and it must be defended not only in courtrooms, but in the choices of ordinary people who refuse to surrender their integrity. The image of journalists, commentators, and even small creators standing firm against overwhelming legal pressure will remain one of the defining elements of this battle, because it speaks to courage in the face of fear, and it sends a message that resonates far beyond this case, that no amount of power or wealth can extinguish the determination of those who believe in their right to speak freely. And that message has now become bigger than the original accusations, bigger than the legal filings, and bigger than the reputations at stake, because it has transformed into a symbol of resistance that echoes across platforms and across communities as the world waits for the final outcome. No one knows how the courts will rule or what revelations may still surface. But one truth has already emerged with clarity, that this case has changed the conversation forever, and that alone ensures its legacy will endure long after the verdict is reached.